Here's something that might genuinely surprise you: the product that built Apple into the most valuable company on earth could soon become the very thing that pulls its stock price down. Yes, we're talking about the iPhone. And the story behind this potential reversal is far more nuanced and fascinating than the headline suggests. For over a decade, the iPhone has been Apple's golden goose. It launched a revolution, minted billionaires, and turned a struggling tech company into a $2 trillion titan. But markets don't reward the past, they price in the future. And right now, Wall Street is asking a genuinely uncomfortable question: what happens to Apple's valuation when its most important product stops being a growth engine and starts becoming a ceiling? Let's dig into the specifics. iPhone revenue still accounts for roughly 52% of Apple's total sales. That's an enormous concentration of risk sitting in a single product category. And that category is showing signs of saturation. Global smartphone markets in the United States, Europe, and China are not growing the way they once were. Consumers are holding on to their phones longer. Upgrade cycles have stretched from the traditional 2 years to closer to 3 or even 4 years. When people aren't buying new iPhones at the rate Apple needs them to, that 52% revenue pillar starts to look a little shaky. Then there's China, and this is where things get particularly thorny. Apple faces intensifying competition from Huawei, which has made a remarkable comeback despite US sanctions, releasing domestically produced chips that are closing the performance gap with Western technology. Chinese consumers, especially amid rising nationalist sentiment, are increasingly choosing local brands. Apple's market share in China has been slipping, and China represents one of Apple's largest revenue markets. Losing ground there isn't a minor inconvenience, it's a structural threat. Add to this the regulatory environment. The European Union's Digital Markets Act is already forcing Apple to make concessions on its App Store model, which directly threatens the services revenue Apple has been counting on to diversify away from iPhone dependency. The irony here is almost poetic. Apple's pivot towards services as a hedge against iPhone stagnation is itself being squeezed by regulators. Now, here's where the or maybe not part of this story becomes genuinely important. Because Apple is not sitting still. The company is betting enormous resources on artificial intelligence integration. Apple Intelligence, its suite of on-device AI features, as the catalyst for the next major iPhone upgrade supercycle. The theory goes like this: hundreds of millions of iPhone users are currently running devices that are too old to support these new AI capabilities. That installed base represents a massive, pent-up demand waiting to be unlocked. If Apple Intelligence delivers a compelling enough experience, it could trigger one of the largest synchronized upgrade waves in the company's history. That's not a small hypothetical. Analysts have estimated that the addressable upgrade opportunity runs into the hundreds of millions of units globally. And Apple has a track record of making its customers want things they didn't know they needed. The stock market, characteristically, is caught between these two narratives. On one hand, you have a maturing product and saturating markets facing geopolitical and regulatory headwinds. On the other, you have a company with unparalleled brand loyalty, an AI-driven hardware refresh cycle potentially building momentum, and a services business that, even under pressure, continues to generate extraordinary margins. So what does this mean for investors? Apple's stock price has historically demanded a premium valuation built on growth expectations. If the iPhone becomes a drag rather than a driver, that premium becomes very difficult to justify. But if the AI supercycle materializes the way optimists believe it will, the critics will look very wrong, very quickly. The real question isn't whether the iPhone is a burden or a blessing right now, it's whether Apple can thread this needle precisely enough to keep the market believing the story hasn't changed.